Lando Norris grabs the on-track headlines once again on day 2 of pre-season testing in Bahrain as Carlos Sainz for Williams tops the timesheets. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding and I'm delighted to be joined as always by lead editor Ian Parks in what is still a very cold Bahrain at the Bahrain International Circuit. Ian, we've got to start with McLaren because whilst Lando did not top the timesheets like he did on Wednesday, McLaren clearly focusing on their long run pace. But I mean, a definite warning has been sent to McLaren's rivals because Norris's pace this afternoon, his long run, his race run, was quite staggering.
Not only was the race run quite staggering, Nick, but also there were a couple of occasions as well where he was about to set what appeared to be the quickest time before deciding not to complete sector 3 and instead dive down into the pits because without a shadow of a doubt, McLaren seems to have pace to spare in that car. Both Lando and Oscar Piastri, they're both in the car today. Both well down on the timesheet at the end of the day in comparison to the leading time of Carlos Sainz, with Lewis Hamilton second in the Ferrari. But as I mentioned, Lando, without a shadow of a doubt, was going to set the quickest time. At one stage, he purpled the middle sector. He'd set a personal best in sector 1, purpled the middle sector, was a tenth quicker than both Carlos and Lewis. And he was definitely going to set the quickest time on the medium compound tyre that's being used here for this particular test session this week. But no, didn't complete the lap, dived down into the pits instead. Both, as I mentioned after Wednesday's update, actually, it's looking very good for both McLaren and Ferrari at the moment. Red Bull have had a few gremlins today. Mercedes looking generally quite good. They've been cranking out the laps with George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. But at the moment, we're going to speak to Andrea Stella later on this evening, and I'll be able to bring you some updates on that when I speak tomorrow after the close of testing here to give you Andrea's thoughts. But at the moment, McLaren looking very good.
You mentioned there Red Bull, of course, today it was only Liam Lawson in the car. Max Verstappen gets all of Friday, but a difficult day for Red Bull, it seemed. Everybody lost about an hour of running this morning due to rain in Bahrain. Yes, I did say that, but obviously Red Bull and Liam lost even more time due to, let me quickly read my script to make sure I get this right, a loss of engine water pressure, which obviously lost Liam time. He only set 91 laps across the day, so of course Red Bull only completed 91 laps. Red Bull were the only team not to complete over 100 laps today, and I mean, whilst a lot of the comments from Helmut Marko, for example, have been quite positive, there's got to be a little bit of room to be concerned for Red Bull, perhaps, because it's not been the smoothest of days.
But this is testing it. This is what testing is all about. Okay, yeah, the majority of teams have had pretty plain sailing running so far across these 2 days. You're occasionally going to get these gremlins. So, best to get them out of the way in testing. And then hopefully you can move on from that, rectify those, move on from that, go into the final day with Max getting all day in the car on Friday, as you've mentioned, and then have a clean slate going into the Australian Grand Prix. Max was, well, as you said, not in the car today. He was, however, in the driver's press conference that takes place during the hour-long lunch break between the morning and afternoon session. And he was asked for his thoughts on the RB21. Overall, he was quite positive that he got generally a good feeling compared to this time last year in the car when he felt the RB20 was not quite to his liking, perhaps, but we all know then what he did with that car by winning 4 of the first 5 Grand Prix, 7 out of the first 10, before things started to catch up with Red Bull in terms of the overall consistency of that car, shall we say. It started just to take a little bit of nosedive. There were issues with it, as we know, over the course of the second half of that season before Max eventually did wrap up that 4th consecutive title. But as I say, overall, he feels relatively comfortable, confident in the car. And I think we're going to get a better impression as to how Max is feeling when he's done a full day in that car on Friday. He did point out on a couple of occasions that I've only had half a day in it, but even so, that half a day he felt was positive overall. So from his perspective, he's quite happy. Let's see what we got coming out of Friday from a more overall, more well-rounded perspective.
Something which was quite interesting is a comment that came out today from Red Bull's Pierre Wache, because obviously it was reported by Motorsport magazine after Wednesday's running that Red Bull had this huge major upgrade to introduce tomorrow on Friday. Well, it seems that actually that's not the case. Pierre Wache very much downplaying what is perhaps, being reported as a radical upgrade. It appears that's not the case though.
Yeah, Motorsport magazine is normally very spot on with its reporting. So um, I'm going to take Pierre Vache's comments with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because naturally you would feel that they would want to try and
Yeah.
downplay that kind of report. As I say, Motorsport magazine, very well established. It's got a very esteemed writer in Christian Manath who reports for that publication. He's, as I say, he's a very well informed journalist. So I understand where Pierre's coming from by wanting to try and downplay things a little bit. As I say, let's see what's on the car on Friday. Then we've got a better appreciation as to where Red Bull will be at, and in particular at the hands of Max Verstappen. We'll see what kind of lap times he will be able to produce in comparison to what we've seen from McLaren and Lando Norris in particular. As I say, Lando seemed to be holding back a little bit. We think there's more to that car, and that's why he didn't complete those, what were going to be those fast laps that would have
Yeah.
put him at the top of the timesheet again for the second day running. Instead, I think Lando and Oscar were down in about 14th or 15th or 15th and 16th, something along those lines. Certainly well off the pace in terms of the actual finishing lap time on the day, but definitely they are well on the pace and more than likely ahead of their rivals when it comes to what we've seen on track today so far.
At least in terms of Red Bull, we've not got to wait long to see if they've got any shiny new parts for the car on Friday. Let's talk, though, on some of Max Verstappen's comments in that driver's press conference today. And of course, he did address his boos that he received last week at F1 75. And well, it's fair to say that he wasn't really in much of a mood to talk about it.
No, I actually asked him the question as for how he felt about it, and whether it was something that needed addressing. And it gave a very sarcastic but humorous Max Verstappen comment. It has to be said, booze? What booze? I didn't hear anything. And he basically turned around and said, look, I don't feel I have any need to answer that, because I did mention to him as well within my question, look, your dad said, it was Jos Verstappen, of course, your dad did say that there's a possibility you might boycott future events if that's the way you felt you were going to be treated on your future visits to England. And as I say, he decided to play the humour card. It did draw quite a few laughs, it has to be said, from the assembled media in the press conference. And then he, once again, later in the press conference, and I know you're going to come on to this bit, Nick, he decided to add a little bit more sarcasm to an additional question that took place.
Well, should we get straight into that? Because, of course,
Yeah.
Max and Lando Norris, who was also in the same press conference today, were asked about their relationship after fighting for the title last year. And I think it's fair to say, Ian, that Max and Lando, for anybody concerned about their relationship, have absolutely no reason to be concerned. You might even spot them in a pub very soon.
They decided to play it for laughs on this occasion. And I think very much Lando fed off
Yeah.
what Max said initially, because as you're saying, both Max and Lando were asked about their relationship going into this season, bearing in mind what happened at the end of it, where it got a little bit fractious, in particular on track on occasions, as you may recall. So Max turned around and said, it's terrible. We're not friends anymore. And Lando, as I say, fed off that and turned around and said, well, yeah, we actually had a fight in a pub the other day as well. So it gives you a little bit of an idea as to the banter that was flowing between them on this particular occasion. Look, they're good friends at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We do know. Yes, we saw what happened last season when you're in a title fight, as they were, and we all know that for most people, they thought, well, it wasn't actually quite the toe-to-toe title fight that Lewis and Max had potentially. It was back in 2021, where that was literally, they were going hell for leather. On this occasion, it was Lando really trying to catch up to Max, but Lando most certainly took it to Max on track over the final few races of last season, and they did have their exchanges. They did come to blows on track, of course, with a few incidents. And that naturally did spark a few things behind the scenes. But for the most part, they are still, relatively good friends, as good as you possibly can be between teammates in between drivers in rival teams. No doubt we're going to see them have those exchanges again on track. But for the most part, as I say, they were playing it for laughs today. And in fairness, fair play to them for doing
Yeah.
so as well.
100%. I just want to know if they've been in a pub together, what their drink of choice is. That's something that
Exactly. Who
I
knows
want to
what? I
know.
think Max likes a GNC, if I recall.
Does he? Ooh.
Very, very partial to a gin and tonic. Yeah, I do remember at the end of last season, when he'd won the title, I seem to remember that he was having a few gin and tonics as well as a few beers that particular night. I seem to
Interesting
remember his
combo.
comment on that particular occasion. Oh, we got very heavy, hard-hitting combo, that's for sure.
Well, of course, let us know in the comments what you think Max and Lando's choice of drink is if they were to be in a pub. I mean, that just sums up testing. But let's discuss Lewis Hamilton a little bit to end off before looking ahead to tomorrow, because Lewis was in the car this morning. A very good morning. He obviously topped the morning session. But interestingly, some comments in time came out from Lewis regarding comments made by Toto Wolff, and obviously the particular comment about Toto quoting about, shelf life and whether Lewis is getting on a bit. It's fair to say Lewis responded quite we use the word at Racing News 365, stinging response.
Yeah, it was quite punchy, wasn't it? It's a beautiful interview, I have to say, in Time magazine. If you have the opportunity to read it, folks, and you're a big Lewis Hamilton fan, of course, then I would urge you to have a look at it. Very colourful prose, as I said, beautifully written article. But Lewis asked quite some punchy questions, and in return, he gave quite some punchy answers. And he basically turned around and said, with regard to that Toto comment about only having a shelf life, I am built differently. Wonderful quote from
Mic
comment.
drop.
Wonderful, boom, drop the mic. Wonderful comment from Lewis Hamilton. We will see what he's got as a 40-year-old on track this year. And if testing so far is anything to go by, and I did touch quite heavily on the F1 update on Wednesday as to why it was a lot different for Lewis this year, given the car that's been produced by Ferrari for 2025. Only 0.04 of a second off the leading time, set by Williams' Carlos Sainz at the end of the day. As you say, Nick, Lewis held sway at the top of those time sheets for quite a while before eventually being usurped by Carlos. Those leading times, just out of interest, from Carlos and Lewis, only 0.2 of a second slower than Max Verstappen's leading or pole position time from last year's Bahrain Grand Prix. Both of those times would have been good enough to have been on the front row with Max at that Grand Prix. Yes, of course, the cars have developed quite considerably over the course of the past 12 months, throughout the course of last season, obviously, because Bahrain was the season opener last year, of course. So as I say, yes, development has taken place. Cars are a lot different now, but nevertheless, quite eye-opening times from both drivers. And that gives you an indication not only as to the development of the cars over these past 12 months, but also a little bit of an indication, as I say, as to what we might have going into this season. Williams looking good to potentially be quite at the front of that midfield pack for now. And Ferrari, as I say, look to be, I would suggest, battling it out with McLaren for those front running spots.
And of course, worth noting on the topic of Williams, that of course, like at Red Bull, Williams only ran Carlos Sainz today. Alex Albon gets the entirety of Friday. So obviously Carlos's test is done, as is Liam Lawson's. Of course, we do have, though, 1 day left to report, and it's crazy how fast this has gone. So Ian, looking ahead to Friday, fingers crossed, no rain. What are you looking forward to seeing on Friday?
I think we've touched on it already, Nick. I think it's going to be the all-day running of Max Verstappen in that RB21. I think we're going to get to see a better, bigger picture as to just what that car has to offer this season. Yes, it's not going to be the full clear picture. We will not get to see that, of course, until qualifying day on Saturday at Melbourne's Albert Park on March 15 for the season opening Grand Prix. But at least we're going to have, as I say, a better understanding, I feel, as to where Red Bull and Max is in relation to Ferrari and McLaren.
I just want to see Haas's one-lap pace, because I predicted, yesterday I said I was really looking forward to seeing them showing some one-lap pace on day 2. And again, they were miles off the top of the timesheets, again focusing on long-run pace. So come on, Haas, I want to see what you guys have got.
I said yesterday, I said yesterday, I said, look, I can't see them repeating that. They're going to give us
Crazy.
some indication. And
Nope.
do you know what? They've done exactly the same thing. Unbelievable from Haas. A tremendous amount of laps once
Yeah.
again produced by that team. And I think they're currently top of the lap charts, if I'm not mistaken, Nick, for across the 2 days so far. Or maybe second. They're certainly very high up there, that's for sure.
They're very high up, and I haven't got that stat on me, but you can check it out on Racing News 365. Of course, anything you like from this video, anything you want to discuss from day two, let us know in the comment section below, and let us know as well in the comment section, tongue twister, what you're looking forward to seeing on the final day of testing. On top of that, please do smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to join Ian and myself after the final day on Friday. See you later.
And as always, folks, take care until then.